Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Well, today we are covering the purge that is going on right now inside of the U.S. military. There have been a couple of very recent dismissals, firings of key leadership posts. Number one was C.Q. Brown, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, essentially the top post in the U.S. military. Now, this individual, General Brown, had made some comments that I'm not so sure were necessary. In early, well, I don't want to say early, but during the quote-unquote George Floyd protests, the protests, he had made some comments about the need for racial reconciliation. Now, look, I don't know if many of you have had the opportunity to see the entirety of the investigation into what happened to the criminal George Floyd. But I think in terms of that incident, General Brown was probably speaking out of turn. He was not fully debriefed in terms of what happened in that specific incident. The media did a horrible job of taking various excerpts and various video footage of that incident and shaping that narrative without fully understanding police procedure, the policies and procedures in terms of what those officers were trained to do. And on top of that, a great deal was left out about the history and about that very incident in terms of the nature, the drug-induced nature of George Floyd. Now, was that the reason that this individual was fired by President Trump? No. He was hired, General Brown was hired by Joseph Biden and his the actual puppet masters that were pulling the strings of the administration. He was hired because he was politically reliable. Was C.Q. Brown the best candidate for the head of the entire U.S. military? Is it possible that there was one person that was more competent than General Brown? Now, I would argue it's possible that there were dozens of candidates that were as and or more competent than General Brown. However, the reason that General Brown was placed at the head of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was why? Why do you think that was? You tell me. Next on the chopping block, Admiral Franchetti. Again, head of naval operations. Head of naval operations. Was she the most competent person to be placed in that position. And compounding that, she has a political ideology that fit with the Joseph Biden administration. And so she was removed. This is not uncommon to see this occur. If you go back to the Obama administration, the military absolutely despised Barack Obama, Barack al-Hussein Obama. Despised him, couldn't stand him. And he knew that. And during the administration of Barack Obama, he meddled in military operations. He handicapped the U.S. military in many, many different ways. Operations that were taking place in Iraq and Afghanistan were said to be taking place out of the White House. If you wanted to do something, if you were a battlefield commander and you knew that there was a threat, and you knew that a operation had to take place to eliminate that threat, those battlefield commanders, those warfighters, had to go through the White House. Completely different under the Trump administration. Hands off, let the military do what the military needs to do. Now, the problem, the challenge that President Trump is eliminating is these political ideologues. He has to get rid of them. They were placed in those positions because of their politics and their support, obviously, for the Biden administration. The firing of many of these career federal employees that are going to take place, those have to occur, especially at the department head level. A lot of that is going to have to happen because those individuals were put in those positions by Barack Obama. Barack Obama politicized the federal career workforce, and especially those who were appointed to supervisory and managerial roles within the federal government. All across the DOJ, in the various agencies. And that's all going to have to be cleaned up and purged. You saw the ramifications of what happens when you politicize the law enforcement agencies of the United States. Because of the activity that occurred under Barack Obama, and the first Trump administration really did not fully understand what had happened during the 8 years of Barack Obama. They were pretty oblivious, and they were worried about other things. And compounding that, quite honestly, I don't believe they thought they were going to win. And I think they were surprised that they beat Hillary Clinton. And then once they defeated Hillary Clinton and were put into office, they had to figure things out very quickly. And unfortunately, it wasn't fast enough. And it wasn't done in completion the way it is being done now. The military is going to have to be purged of this diversity, equity, and inclusion virus. It has to be eliminated, and it has to start really with the U.S. military. It has to go. The concept of having transvestites in these military units, these undeployable transvestites in military units, is something we cannot have, especially in the military. Furthermore, women in combat roles. Now, I think there are roles that women can play in the military. Is that role a line infantryman? Is that a combat infantry unit in the 82nd Airborne? Is it a armored crewman in an M1A2 main battle tank in which they are required to load heavy munitions into the breeches of main guns? Probably not. Can women make good fighter pilots? I would argue yes. But there are some roles, and especially roles that some of these senior leaders that were placed into these positions by Barack Obama and then by Joseph Biden, that wanted to push the narrative that women could become SEALs, that women could become part of the Delta Force, the unit, that women could become Marine Raiders, that women could become part of the Ranger Regiment. No. Hit the pause button. Think this through. Get information from battlefield commanders, frontline units, have a real conversation, and you will very quickly understand it is not good business. And there's so many reasons why. But at the end of the day, you would really have to serve in one of those units to get an understanding. You would have to serve in a combat arms role in the U.S. military to understand that it is not a place for a female. It is not. And compounding that, there are other things that have to happen that I'm not going to go into on this piece of content to allow a female into these frontline combat roles. No, it has to stop. And Pete Hegseth is going to clean this up. And it starts with the leadership. These leaders were okay with the status quo. They were okay with degrading the U.S. military through diversity, equity, and inclusion. That was more important than the lethality of the fighting force. It was more important. And now these folks are going to go off and they're going to retire. They've had long, distinguished careers. They'll go off and they'll write books. They'll go work for possibly defense subcontractors. We'll see what happens with that. Hard to say. That could be cut off as well. We'll see what happens. But you'll see this continue. And again, it has to be done. It has to be done. The media is going to put a spin on it. They are going to create a narrative that will try to make this unpopular. They will be sympathetic to the individuals being removed. But it has to be done. The military was seriously damaged by Biden and his administration. U.S. military. And that has to be undone. Now look, in closing, I am getting ready to head out of town. It has been very cold here, and I am going to take a break and go get some sun in South Florida. And I will be there for the next week. I have not yet decided if I'm going to produce any content while I'm down there. I'm kind of leaning towards taking a little bit of a break, a little bit of hiatus, then coming back and then get the ball rolling with more content. But I have not made up my mind as of yet, so stay tuned. More to come, and as always, thank you for joining us. Have a good day.